Hello everybody and welcome to a DenziBlitz bonus. I'm Mike from Electric City Sentai DenziCaster, and this is a little bonus discussion Q&A thing that I'm posting today along with our regular episode of the DenziBlitz, where we are going through more of Uchu Keiji Gavin. This was spurred on by one of our viewer comments. Wrestling, on our last episode of DenziBlitz, posted a couple of comments. We always love comments, so thank you, Wrestling. But one of those included a question, and I responded in the comment section just stating that my full thoughts would require more space than a reply on, in a comment section could really provide, and that I would talk about it on the next DenziBlitz. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, that episode of DenziBlitz is going to be really long if I talk about the episodes and the question, because the question is really, really kind of thought-provoking, and it made me sit down and do some thinking. So, Wrestling, let's get to your question. And if you have a question, by the by, anyone out there, throw it in one of the comment sections, and I will be happy to answer it. If it's something I can answer in the comment section, I'll answer the comment section. If it's something that piques my interest and makes me think, this is worth me, putting a video up for, because it's a little different and it's going to be a somewhat lengthy answer, then awesome. I love that too. So maybe one day we'll do a Q&A or some such thing. But in the meantime, just leave them in the comments and I will get to them, because I check them every day, give or take. So here we go. Wrestling, aside from being happy we're down to the final 10 episodes of Gavin, had mentioned that he had recently read some comments from a Japanese Toku site discussing some of the more serious, more dramatic episodes of the Space Sheriff series, particularly Gavin and Charaban. And I think this is probably in reference to me referring to these as kid shows. The statement that was made, which via Google Translate he tells us, is, quote, "Older Toku shows are for kids and parents, while newer Toku shows geared toward more for geeks." End quote. In his words, although it maybe sounds like old man yells at cloud type rambling, he kind of gets what they mean by the statement. And he wants to know my opinion. Wrestling says he can't really comment because he only watches a handful of older Toku shows and really doesn't follow any of the newer stuff. Well, let's talk about it for a second. My knowledge of Tokusatsu, my viewership, isn't necessarily isolated just to older shows, obviously. I have not kept up with X-Aid, admittedly. I didn't really watch Ghost of the new Kamen Rider shows. I've seen a good bit of X-Aid. I should note that, but I have not watched the entire series. I have not kept up with it as it comes out. But I have watched a lot of the newer shows. So, for instance, I've seen, if you're looking at Kamen Rider, I've seen basically all of every series up to Ghost. So, Drive and Fourze and Wizard and Gaim and so on. And I've seen a large chunk of the newer Super Sentai. Admittedly, I punched out of the Ninja pretty quick. Most of us here on DenziCaster did. Then I've watched a little bit of Zyuohger. I've watched a little bit of Q-Ranger. I watched all of Tokyuger. And then, go back a little bit further. I've seen all of Go Busters and all of, oh my word, I feel terrible on Kyryuger, the one that becomes Dino Charge. So I've seen a good bit of modern stuff. And I've seen a good bit of stuff from the 2000s, and I've pretty much seen most of the stuff from the 2000s, and then going back even further. I can't really disagree with the statement that older shows were more kids and parents, newer shows are geared more towards kids and geeks. I don't know necessarily that I would consider a blanket statement, though. When you look back at older tokusatsu shows, and we're referring here pretty specifically to Toku hero shows, because one must keep in mind that there have been tokusatsu shows and productions and movies over the years that were not even remotely geared toward kids. Godzilla, at least in its original incarnation, was very much aimed at an older audience. The Showa era Godzilla movies, when you got into the campier Godzilla is the hero type movies, yes, they were then geared and skewed a little bit towards a younger audience. But the original movie is not a kid's movie. You can make a pretty good argument that Godzilla Raids Again is not a kid's movie. When you start looking into the Heisei era stuff, it's meant for an older audience, not necessarily adults, but an older audience. And adults certainly can enjoy and love it, and many of us do. And then when you get to the newer stuff, like the Millennium era movies, especially Shin Godzilla is not a kid's movie. The 2014 Legendary Godzilla movie, not a kid's movie. So we have to keep in mind that there have been productions made not targeting a kid audience. So we're going to focus on Toku heroes for the purposes of this question. Way back when, the earliest days of Toku heroes, and heroes in general, it's considered kids' fare. Yes, even with the comic books, American comic books of the 1930s and 40s, you had adults and whatnot buying them as a form of escapism, but it really was cheap children's entertainment. And that's what it became in Japan. The earliest heroes, Supergiant and Moonlight Mask, were at their core superheroes, and that is just kind of equates itself to kids' entertainment, realistically until almost the 1990s. When you start looking into the Toku hero shows that we all know, and you're looking at shows like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai and Ultraman, then it really is the same sort of thing. The farther back you go, the more specifically kids the shows are. Now, where the evolution comes in is who is spending the money, I think, to be perfectly honest. If you look in at the older shows like, say, Kikaida, or Inuzaman, or Akumizer 3, or Kamen Rider, or Ultraman, or Go Ranger, or Jacker, a lot of these shows were palatable to adults and aimed at children. You wanted, as a business, I think, to entertain both. This is sort of the origin of the phrase "for the dads," because a lot of times you're targeting an audience of predominantly male children, because that's who buys the action figures and things like that. And by doing so means you're going to have predominantly male heroes. So mothers may choose to watch it anyway, to spend time with their children. For the fathers, and they have something to look at. They have the guys, because if you look, there's not a whole lot of bad-looking superheroes. Think about it. Now, if you look at what I call the For the Dads episodes, and I'm not the originator of that phrase by any stretch, then for something like that, then you start looking at like the beach episodes and the female sidekicks and things like that, where the idea was, let's give the dads in the audience something to look at while their kids are enjoying the action and the heroes. Is it a sexist way of looking at it? Yes, it is. But it was also a completely different era. It's the 1960s or 70s or 80s, in a completely different culture. So, and even today, if you watch shows, I mean, to this day, there are no bad-looking superheroes on TV for the most part, be it male or female. So, you are making it palatable to the adults in the audience, the parents, while the kids are enjoying it. And the reason is because the parents have the income, if you kind of stop to think about it. Plus, I think there was the notion of it being family entertainment. The farther back you go, the more family entertainment is on television. That's pretty much anywhere in the world. You have this idea back, even when I was growing up, and I grew up in the 80s, and I was pretty much there for the transition. When I was a young child, most homes had one television set, and it's in the living room. So what one person watches, every person watches. So family entertainment was king. And we would watch, family sitcoms or later America's Funniest Home Videos or things like this that were accessible and enjoyable by the entire family. Now, as time moves on, there's multiple TVs in every house. Now you have, there are homes where every room in the house has a TV. In our home, we have, my wife Kane and I, we only have one television. However, we have 5 different methods of watching any televised entertainment. We have a laptop, an all-in-one, 2 smartphones, and then the television. So now it's more than just the television is the television. And there's so many more ways to watch these things. Which means now you can laser focus your product at one particular subsect of people. That transition, if you watch a show like Kamen Rider or Metal Heroes or something like that, and you're just watching the shows all the way through, those paradigm shifts are very jarring in certain cases. Or if you jump from watching a show from the 80s to a show from the 20 teens, it's a very jarring difference. And that's because you're not getting to see the evolution of it. Now, as a flip side of that, if you watched, say, Super Sentai all the way through, Super Sentai has been going non-stop since 1979. So if you start with the 1979 installment of Super Sentai, so Battle Fever J, yes, Super Sentai was around a few years before that, but there's a 1-year gap where Spider-Man replaces it in the lineup. So if you start with Battle Fever J and you were to watch even a handful of episodes from every series all the way through, you will see this evolution where it goes at first from being entertainment for the whole family to then being entertainment for the home's children, because maybe the parents have a TV and then the kids have a TV. So now the show has to appeal to the entire group of children, whether that is primary, kindergarten age, all the way up to high school age. It has to appeal to that entire group. And then it starts to evolve further where you can skew one show towards your older teens, and then you can skew one show towards your younger teens. And that really is where sort of in the 2000s, the divide between Super Sentai and Kamen Rider really becomes most apparent, because at this point, Kamen Rider becomes more of the show for the older audience, and then Super Sentai comes over here and skews towards a younger audience. And then all the way to today, where at this point, Super Sentai, I think, is probably really targeted at a probably elementary school age audience. And then your middle school, junior high school ages, that is probably your audience for Kamen Rider. And maybe a little older. And that is sort of where the divide has happened over the years. And disposable income now is spread out amongst It's no longer about having to have something the whole family has to watch, and it's no longer about convincing mom or dad, hey, can we get this? And mom and dad sort of being the arbiter. Our societies have changed, our mores, our thought processes, our shopping habits have all changed. Now a kid can just go, mommy, 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 I want this, and mommy will buy it for them. Oh, it's a toy, here you go. Without necessarily knowing what it's a toy of. There are toys for, as we said, there are toys, you can go to Toys R Us right now and pick up toys for Five Nights at Freddy's, which is not meant for kids. You can go buy toys for Shin Godzilla, which was not meant for kids. So, but the perception is, oh, it's a toy, here you go, kid, kind of thing. So, I think that's where that first part lies, of targeting by age group. It's not so much that older shows were specifically targeting families out of some desire to be family entertainment. I think they were targeting families out of the necessity of being family entertainment. Because mom and dad control the remote control to the TV, and so if it's not something that will entertain them as well, that can engage them as well on some level, even if it's a superheroic escape, then it's going to be relegated to, whenever mom and dad aren't watching. It's not going to be something that's going to be on necessarily when the kids want to watch. So it had to be something everyone would watch. As time has marched forward, and now there's more TVs in each home, and now there's streaming media, and there's smartphones and computers and so on, and the internet age, which allows people like me to have this discussion online. That's when this sort of thing kicks in, right? So that's where I think that first part happens. Now, as far as aiming stuff at geeks, I think that really is just a natural evolution of the genre. There's always been tokusatsu geared at adults. From the days of Godzilla to Ultra Q and so on and so forth. There's always been shows aimed at adults on some level. I think it's a little different here in the United States than it is, say, in Japan. If you look at superhero shows in the US, it's kind of went the opposite direction, which is really strange. The farther back you go, the younger skewed superhero shows become. Going from the 60s with, say, Batman to, say, the 80s and 90s, where it was sort of family entertainment with the likes of, say, The Incredible Hulk or Lois and Clark, and some stuff aimed at teenagers like Superboy and the like, and then you have, and the myriad of various cartoons, but I'm referring just to live action. Then you get to the late 90s and into the teens, or into the 2000s, where it's more geared towards a young adult audience, with shows like Buffy and Angel are superhero shows, whether you want to say they are or not. But shows like that, or Smallville, and then all the way to now, where it really is geared towards more of an adult audience, with shows like The Flash and Gotham and all the Netflix Marvel shows and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And there are more superhero shows on the air right now in the United States than probably the entirety of television history combined from, say, 1960 to 2000. Because right now in the United States, Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Gotham, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Defenders, Punisher is, if it's not out, it's coming out. Then you've got, I think, Gifted, and there's supposed to, Black Lightning. There's like 14 or 15 or getting to close to 20 different superhero shows on the air simultaneously now. And almost every one of them is geared more towards an adult audience. So here in the U.S., it's gone the opposite direction than, say, Japan with Toku heroes. But with that said, there has been a skew towards more adult Toku hero shows over the years. To me, it really is an evolution of the 21st century. Some of the early Kamen Rider shows were more older teen, and certainly were trying to bring in a somewhat older audience, and have some fairly high-level concepts. Not stuff that you would aim at children, but stuff that you would aim at young adults and adults. But now you have shows like the Amazon original series Kamen Rider Amazons, or you have shows like Akiba Ranger, which was not a kid's show, even though it has the look and feel of Super Sentai, and it's a loving tribute to Super Sentai. Now in Japan, what you have is this, I don't want to say cash-in, because that's not the case with all of them, but you have this movement to have a handful of adult-oriented, and I don't mean anything untoward by that, but I mean skewed towards an adult audience, Toku shows, and it's for those people who grew up with them and love them to this day. That's your geek vote, so to speak. And that's going to be your shows like Kanpei, Senshi After 5, or your Garo shows, or Akiba Ranger, or Shogeki go Raigan. I really think that the Space Sheriff movie trilogy was probably aimed more towards that audience, because it was a revival of the old Space Sheriff franchise that people grew up with. The reintroduction, anything they've done with the 10 Years Later movies, has been pretty much geared towards an older audience, because the kids that watched Deca Ranger are now, 10 years later, somewhere between 16 and 20 something. So you get the idea. And it really is just kind of follow the money. Because if you stop, just look behind me. Nothing you see back here was funded by any of our YouTube channel. This is my personal collection, funded out of my pocket. And to this day, I buy Power Morphers and things like that because I'm a fan of Power Rangers from way back. And I've always enjoyed these things. So, to answer the question, is it now geared more towards kids and geeks? Probably not a completely fair statement. I think the shows are now more laser focused. I think now when they sit down to create a new series, they decide what the target audience is going to be, and they're shooting for that target rather than the broader mainstream. Kamen Rider shoots for a teenage to young adult audience. Super Sentai shoots for an adolescent to preteen, young teen audience. Garo shoots more for your adult audience, your late teen, young adult, adult audience. I think that's a conscious decision that's made. The styling, the merchandise, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's nothing more or less than a 20-minute toy commercial. All of that is geared likewise to that age bracket. That's why if you look, there are more Kamen Rider figure-arts, which is a high-end collector's action figure, than there are Super Sentai figure-arts. Why? Because it's an older audience who has A, more money, B, is willing to spend it, and C, would value a high-end toy that they can sit on a shelf and put in a cool pose, sit on a shelf, and then maybe 3 months later they'll come back and they'll just change the pose. They're not going to sit there and play with it every day. And it's not really that robust a toy to do that with. Flip side, Super Sentai has the more robust toys at a lower price point because it's kids that are going to play with it. And then, so that's the dynamic, I think. Whereas older Toku shows, older Toku hero shows, were family entertainment out of necessity. Fewer TVs in the house means more eyeballs in the household that have to be pleased by what they're watching, which means you have to appeal to not just the kid, which is your target audience, but to also the mom and the dad and the older kids and whomever else, grandparents that will be in the home watching this at the same time. So it's not so much a, I think, grand master plan or anything like that. I think it's just an evolution of entertainment and technology going side by side. So there you go, 25 minutes or better. Like I said, I was going to need more than what I could just put in the comments section. So Russlick, I hope that answers your question. I hope I didn't ramble on too terribly long. If any of you other guys out there have a question, any of our other viewers, please feel free to ask it, whether it's in the comments to this video or the comments to the video that inspires it. Please feel free to ask and let us know, because we'd be happy to answer. We love to answer. We love to talk about these sorts of things, whether it's a question for the guys on Chopsaki Cinema or 8-Star Anime or Rage Quit Radio or what have you, or DenziCaster and DenziBlitz. Hey, let us know. If you like the video, please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. It does help us out. Give us a like. That's the big thumbs up if you enjoyed the video as well. If you have your own opinion, your own thoughts, you want to keep the conversation going, that's what the comment section is for. So let's do that. And until next time, folks, if you feel like helping us out here at the ECS Network with to help fund our lighting, our equipment, things of that nature, go to cafepress.com/ECS Network. Pick yourself up a cool t-shirt. We actually have a Space Sheriff inspired DenziCaster t-shirt over there now. So go check that out. I intend to get one in the not terribly distant future, so you might see one here on camera in the coming weeks. And, of course, you can also become one of our patrons at patreon.com/ECS Network. Until next time, folks, I'm Mike. We appreciate you checking us out here for this DenziBlitz bonus, and if you haven't already, Uchu Keiji Gafan, up through episode 39, is up today as well on the DenziBlitz. Check it out and let us know what you think. Until next time, folks, I'm Mike, and I'll see you.